Just a reminder, today's conference is being recorded.
Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Helen Hall and I'm one of IEEE USA's web coordinators. I want to remind you to continue visiting our website because we're going to be adding more and more webinars to the schedule this year. Our presenter today is Milton Chang, and Milton's going to start by telling you a little about himself. Milton?
Okay, thank you. Good morning. Thanks for joining this webinar. We have lots of slides to cover, and so occasionally I may skip one. But today, Nick and I would like to share with you our experience in starting businesses. To start with, I would like to give you a little bit of a context of what I did to introduce myself briefly. I came from Hong Kong and worked my way through college at the University of Illinois, and then went on to Caltech to get my PhD in electrical engineering, working on lasers and things like that. And in a way, very fortunately, that I did not like my job, and I was looking around about 2 years after I started, and my friend at Caltech, fellow student called me, John Matthews called me to join his startup company, Newport, and I was the 7th employee and took over marketing, not knowing a thing about it. But the point I want to make it is I had very little experience, but it didn't hinder us from being successful. And then once you have one success, then you can move on to become a serial entrepreneur. As a matter of fact, in the interim when I was running Newport, I did, between Newport and the later company, New Focus, I've started about, got involved with 12 startups or more, and actually they were all successful, 7 IPOs and 5 acquisitions. And then I thought I was very capable in that regard and started a VC fund and in Cubic. And there I was really not any more successful than most standard VC funds because I was using the same approach, more or less. And so I'd like to share these experiences with you. There I had about 12 startups also in addition, but out of that today about 5 standing, doing fine. So now I spend most of my time trying to complete my book on how to start a business, which should be done soon, I hope, and then spend time mentoring entrepreneur, whoever that contacts me, to get some help. And Nick has similar success experience. He was I called him a smart guy working in Edward Teller's think tank, and then started NChip, and then he joined did a turnaround effort in Tessera. As you know, that's one of the most successful semiconductor licensing company. So anyway, here we go. So I think to set the stage, I think we need to know what's the meaning of entrepreneurship, which today is used very loosely as anybody that starts a business. In reality, if you look at the definition, which is to an individual who creates value in the economy by moving resources out of an area of low productivity into an area of high productivity and greater yield, means that if you want to be called an entrepreneur, you really have to have started a successful business, and that means you have generated sufficient return to your investors. So how does one start a company? I think the conventional thinking that we all have is to come up with a hot idea, put together a great team, get VC funding, generate revenue quickly, and exit with a high valuation. And I think that's really fine if it works out that way. But of course, the consequences of that is that, what you do in that scenario is that you use this method. In fact, that is the method you use when the opportunity is very large and the market window is very narrow. I think that combination almost necessitates you to do that, but even today we'll talk a little bit about how to do a little differently to lower your risk. In that scenario, then everybody is of the like mind to quickly develop the business to gain first mover advantage in the marketplace. And of course, you raise a lot of money to do that. And investors really want flawless execution, and you really hope that everything works out because life can be very difficult if it doesn't. The reality of the startup is that the ROI is typically very high during the early stage of a development of a startup company, because there you are using your full knowledge, take advantage of your experience to do the part that you're most good at, you're best at. And then as you go out to the sort of the business development phase, where you now have to hire salespeople and so forth and gear up for manufacturing, you're actually very inefficient compared to an existing company, because they can just add on to their existing infrastructure and go with it. And in the scenario of this aggressive startup, then chances are you're going to lose control and give up a lot of ownership to the investors and to the management team. And of course, having everything worked out is right. It's highly improbable, and in fact, more haste, less speed, or haste makes waste. And when you have let's say, a professional manager such as a hired CEO, they're likely to spend their way out of mistakes, because nobody wants failure, and spending money is worse of the two evils. And the net result is that you're going to have a low return in overall ROI, and of course, occasionally you may hit a big. And of course, if you hit a big one, then you make out. But that's a very low, high risk proposition for your career. And in fact, I think you need to think a little differently. I went to the Google and type in essentially how to raise money, and there was a very good 5-minute or 6-minute video on YouTube about a VC gave his view of the startup process. And what he basically said is that a big VC firm like his gets about 1,000 business plans a year, and they do about 10 a year. And out of that, I think statistically, they expect 3 or 4 companies to fail. In fact, some of them fairly quickly. And then quite a few of them, maybe 3 or 4, 4 or 5, let's say 4 of them, they will classify as walking dead. That means the companies are staying alive, but not doing very much or generating much business. And then they have 1 or 2 or 3 successful companies that give them meaningful returns. And out of that, if they have 1 big one, then of course they will pay back everything. And so that really works okay statistically on the average for a VC firm, but for the entrepreneur, it's really very difficult. I have known during the telecom bubble, people recruited out of their steady job to join startup companies. And I've known one individual, a very smart individual, I might add, after joining sequentially 3 failed startups, he could not literally find a job. It took him many months, and in fact got a pretty lousy job, I thought. So I think we need to think differently, and that's what we want to talk about today. So I think one of the main things to remember is to, first of all, is to focus on getting a successful startup first. Once you have a success under your belt, you will have credibility to become, for example, serial entrepreneur, or you can build out a company over time. And to do that, you need to be well prepared, have some interest, taken an interest in business, so you know something about it, a management capability, And what's most important is to develop a thorough business plan to essentially get a dry run of the business on paper so that you can avoid a lot of the pitfalls. And one of the key points I will emphasize today is we engineers tend to think that way, is to build a prototype of the business. Even if you get VC funding, instead of building out in one swoop, is to develop a prototype of the business so that you will have better information to make determination how much to invest as you go forward. And then, of course, you want to get the right amount of capital from the right investors who can bring more than money to help you succeed. And then you have to be, good at it, good at doing it. But I think one of the main points I also want to make is to try to work towards an early acquisition. At least don't reject an early acquisition. Because that, in fact, is one way to maximize your return on investment. I think to mitigate risk, in a way, you have to think pretty much like an investor. Okay, let's go over some of these key points. First of all, you want to get a big success. Focus. You want to focus on getting your first success. And most of us starting business tend to think they want a big success. In fact, they want to be fairly aggressive in doing that because we often subconsciously think what's in front of us is the only opportunity that's exposed to us. That's obviously untrue. And once you, and of course, if you think that there are many more opportunities later on, and you need a success first, then you're willing to find a more workable business, which is likely to be a niche business, service-oriented business, or service-intensive business that you can build over time, and you work at it. And so that's more likely to give you the success you need rather than going after the aggressive startup that most people think of. And one of the key points I want to make in this talk is to prototype your business. So even if you have gotten VC funding, hopefully you have rational, intellectual VCs that you're working with that is willing to kind of go slow in the beginning to emphasize value creation where you do best, because you want to, like good project management approach, you want to develop the prototype to resolve all the bottlenecks before you build up all of the infrastructure costs. And then you say, well, that's going to cost me substantial delay. Well, I didn't say don't do the ground paving work to move forward vigorously once you decided to go. But what you do in the meantime is that you can one-up on first mover market pioneers by learning from their mistakes. You can, in fact, develop your products and so forth, but get marketing feedback, accurate marketing feedback, so that you can make better decisions as to what kind of product you should be making, how do you introduce the product, and so forth. Pave the way so that you can go quickly when you're ready to go. And in the meantime, you can learn from the market pioneers' mistake to do a better job. At the end of the day, it's a better product, even though you may be second or third in the marketplace. That's what makes you successful. And then you can also develop IP to cover what you learn, which could be like user experiences or the related technologies such as in manufacturing to make your and also related technology to make your application feasible so that you can hit the ground running. And I think also a very essential thing is to get some even maybe a small order, some kind of a commitment from potential users so that you can, get true validation in the potential market. In fact, I would give you a horror story that during the telecom bubble, startup companies would get really encouraging feedback from the test labs in the carriers, and basically say, well, that sounds really good. If you have your system ready, we'll test it. We won't even charge you anything. Well, it turns out that these individuals have never had any intention of buying the equipment, but rather as a way of keeping their job, keeping busy. So I think you really need to do a good job in your homework to know where you really stand in the marketplace. So the second point I want to mitigate risk is to find an opportunity that you can be successful at. And I think it's really essential to find ideas in areas that are in familiar ground so that you have a competitive advantage. You have the network, you have the understanding that's intrinsic to provide you some protection. And all too often we see that the grass is greener and get all excited about an application only to find that it was due to really our ignorance, but not knowing for having missed some additional data to get excited for nothing. And then, but sometimes you have no choice but to explore a new industry. So, for example, I wasn't bragging to say that I had all of my startups in the beginning were successful. Part of the reason for that is the laser industry was in the embryonic stage. Almost anything you do, within reason, you are creating value, and that's what makes your business successful, as the definition of entrepreneurship. And in the early days of industry, the opportunities are abundant. But today, we are about to celebrate the 50th year of the demonstration of lasers. The industry have a lot of established company. I wouldn't say it's mature because it's still finding applications possibility, new applications. But it's really difficult to find new stones to turn over, to find ideas. And then when you really do start, you have awesome competitors from established companies. So a lot of the optics expert are now looking into sort of biomedical field or green area to find opportunities. But I think you're making a mistake if you think you have such expertise, a knowledge base that you can do a business let's say, in the biomedical field. Well, you can be a biomedical technology company, which meaning is to use technology to serve the biomedical field. But if you think you're going to build a biomedical business per se, being a biomedical expert, you're probably making a mistake because you are not necessarily, you're not an industry insider. And even if you have a good idea, maybe you have a very good idea, the insiders, there's a way of keeping you out. You're not part of the club. So I think when you want to explore new opportunities in a new industry is to think of yourself as a service provider. How do I apply my technology to serve the new industry and then take time, maybe, many years to become an industry insider, then you can pursue the business. I have one very unhappy outcome. I started a biomedical company using lasers technology to do a microscopy. It's called laser capture microscopy. Basically, it's to encapsulate, pick out a single cell for DNA analyses for biomedical research and cancer diagnostic. And that business development was extremely well. It has the product was extremely well received. The business was growing, and then we came across a cancer diagnostic idea and decided to pursue that, and wind up squandering all of the resources, just simply cannot bring it to a success, and the company has to be liquidated. And had we stick to building instruments to serve that industry, we could have been extremely successful adding new instrumentation. So I think that's a very important message to remember, is to have an attitude of serve. For that matter, that is, in fact, the most important attitude in starting businesses, to serve your customers, rather than, in some sense, thinking that you are so smart that you can sort of drive your customers. So, next slide. The other very important thing is to get the right amount from the right investors, and allow a lot of time to raise capital, because it's going to take, generally I found, at least 6 months to do it, much longer than you think anyway. And you want to raise extra amount to cover contingencies, because things don't always progress at the rate that that works out as you expected. And you want to get investors who can provide you more than just money. Their expertise, they will have a sense of ownership, so they can be very helpful to you. But the starting point of that relationship is, in fact, to be very upfront in establishing their expectations. I think a classical question I get is like, should I be sort of like boasting or exaggerating my opportunity in order to raise my money? I think that's a very silly question, because investors are pretty savvy. It wouldn't take long for them to do diligence to figure out where the reality is. So be upfront. You get what you deserve, and try to be upfront with them to establish realistic expectations, so that you can develop a professional working relationship of mutual respect and trust. It's the unrealistic expectation that results in disappointment that can make your life very miserable. And the other thing, kind of the subtle advice, is to never take money from anybody who has doubts or lack confidence in your ability. It's one of those situations, say, well, I'm not too sure, but okay, let me invest. Because that little doubt is going to fester to become big doubts, to second guess everything you do, and that's not going to work. And finally, of course, you have to put effort in to build a professional relationship. Well, we cover a lot of grounds, and there are a lot more to cover. And then, of course, after you kind of get enough marketing data, then you can then decide on appropriate approach. And I will skip over this slide because it will be covered later on as well. And typically that technology commercialization undergoes several stages. These are not very, they don't have real clear demarcation, and you in fact will be doing things that may be common, such as talking to customer and all that in all these stages. But the first stage is to really, you have a technical idea, and what you wanted to do is to decide on if your idea makes business sense, because technology is just one piece of the puzzle. It takes both. The technology has to make sense, and it also has to make business sense. And you want to create value by validating the technology. That's what you do during that phase, and then find applications to apply your technology. And in the process, you are going to find peripheral or additional technologies that have to be developed in order to make your technology applicable. And then what you wanted to do in getting funding is to be creative, such as getting SBIR, BAA, looking through BAAs, sort of do some work. Some people stay in university and share part of the patent rights. And one other thing that doesn't get used very often is that you can do a CRADA. It's a research agreement with in government labs to have their people do work for you. And of course, you can use foundries, job shops, in your garage, etc. But I think one thing I want to mention is to really try to do the best you can not to raise money from VC at this stage. That's also a very classical question is, should I raise my seed capital from VCs? VCs is a very good source of venture capital, but most of them are 10-year venture partnerships, and so they really cannot handle opportunities that takes a long time to develop. And also they make their decisions based on facts as much as marked due diligence. They have to quantify the risk to know roughly what kind of return they can get and also what kind of time frame. So during this stage, things are just really up in the air. You're not likely to satisfy these conditions, and so it becomes a mistake to have them as your investor. They're very good for later stages when you are sort of all the ducks line up in a row and you're ready to ramp the business just by putting money in. So here, if you do want to raise money, try to get it from patient investors, private investors who buys into your vision and is willing to be patient. I think the best example that I can think of, I talked to Janet Baker many years ago, the founder of Dragon Speech, voice recognition. She and her husband, Jim, started Dragon System, I think it's called, and in their garage, and she was very proud that it started in their kitchen table, and they didn't take in any VC money, maybe towards the end, maybe, but all of the high-profile startup companies to pursue voice recognition, which was very hot in the 70s, they went out of business because the VC lost faith, and they don't have that kind of patience. And whereas Jim and Janet sold their company when they have about 350 employees, and 30 years later. So that's the kind of situation you want to keep in mind, is to raise money from appropriate investors at the right time and at the right with the right amount. Let's see the next slide. The other one is that you want to homing in on one high potential applications during the course of stage one, because a startup company or startup company have limited resources, and you want to focus that resources to get something to completion to the marketplace, to generate revenue, to gain credibility, to get additional funding, and so forth. So it's very important to focus, and you have to develop an in-depth understanding of how your customer thinks. I think that means don't take your feedback at their face value. I think a very good example is holographic tire testing using lasers. As you know, you make a double exposure, and then even the most minute defect inside the tire would become visible. And it was such a great technology, but for years the tire manufacturers gave excuses about takes too much effort and too costly and all that. So a lot of startup companies, a number of startup companies to pursue this technology went out of business. And it turns out the reason for them not wanting to get the test is because they don't want to have a record when a minute failure, a defect in a car, when there's a accident, even a minute defect in the tire could be construed as the cause of the accident. And so until there was a DC-10 during landing blew out all tires in LAX, that the FAA mandated tire testing. And in fact, today, all of the aircraft tires are holographically tested, a modified form of holographic testing to test every retread aircraft tires because they are very expensive and they are retreaded many, many times before they are thrown away. And so had you known that, you would have spent much more time, much more of your effort, a proportion amount of resources to work the FAA route rather than try to make the sale. So you need to get to the bottom of the marketing data in order to understand the real dynamics and the real market size and all that. And frankly, I was saddened in the last few days, read the news that the Segway was being acquired for an undisclosed amount, quote unquote, and then the article in the journal basically said they were only able to identify niche applications for that people mover, and the investors had a wipeout, lost all of their investments to the tune of about $150 million. Now, had they built a prototype of the business, quote unquote, in the technology business could very well mean build a prototype product and do extensive market research, they would have discovered that it was a niche market and would not have gone in after the business in such a big way. So that's another one that to home in on a high potential application, you want to think about building a prototype of the business first by getting really accurate customer feedback. And I think the stage 3 is really prototyping the business once you have identified one application you want to be committing to. And I think that we have covered enough of that on that topic. So the stage 4 then is that depending on the scenario of where you stand, you go after one of the following approach, which is to build out the business aggressively, which we talked about, go after the VC route. The second one is to, when the business has no market window, then you build a business over time. And that, in fact, has been the model that I use to build both Newport and NewFocus. Many of you are probably Newport's customers today. And the third scenario, which happens a lot, in fact, more often than not, is you have a good product idea, but it's not viable as a standalone business. And for those situations, you really have to try to get acquired early. So let's talk about all of these. I think we also have talked enough about the conventional approach, a VC approach, or the aggressive startup approach. But the second scenario, which is the one I like, is to find a business that have no really market window. It's one of those that the harder you work, the more successful you are. And these are usually, I think ideally it's a niche business so that it's hard to have the big boys to come after you, but which usually means it's something that requires close customer interactions, but that you can build over time. I'm not suggesting you start a niche business to remain small, but is to build it over time. Helen, are there some noise behind the scene? But anyway. And get capital from patient investors because likelihood is that because you are trying to build a business over time, and that may not be compatible with professional venture investors. And then the way we did it at Newport is to basically be extremely customer focused because we ourselves were the industry insider. We were the laser research people ourselves, like our customers. So we were able to provide them really good services with really good product. We were all over them when they needed anything. And with that, then people come to us. And then the business grew over time. And then the other thing we did is that we were very conservative in the way we grew because the investor was John Matthews' uncle, a very conservative banker. So we actually grew from our cash flow and built this business slowly over time. And today, as you know, it's a company well over $500 million, or well over $400 million by other means. Of course, I've left a long time ago. So what you do is in that scenario is you build customer loyalty by providing customer service. That builds customer loyalty to provide a competitive barrier, and then they're also much very willing to buy from you as a base to grow the business. So that's a scenario that you want to try to think of, and especially in areas of your own expertise. The third scenario that generally is that you have a good product but cannot be a standalone business, and usually those are the situations where it's an improvement over an existing product. So today you wouldn't think about exactly think of starting a automobile company, although there are a number of companies trying to do that, and how well they do remains to be seen. And those situations, you really will be better off to get acquired and do enough to validate the value of your business to get acquired. And I'm not saying that being acquired is easy, because that's outside of your control, but at least be willing to get acquired when the opportunity presents itself. And so the approach I would suggest is to proceed to build your company as if it's a standalone company, but apply resources slowly, like building out the prototype business first. And so this way you put most of your resources up front where you're efficient, and then get acquired when when the opportunity presents itself. So that's something we can get into greater details. When you think about it, I think it's pretty obvious what you have to do. Well, I think I want to leave some room for Q&A. So let's just say that in summary then, if I had to just sum up this talk, is to just do it. Both Nick and I were technical person. He was more of a physicist. I'm more of an engineer. But both of us successfully transitioned to become a serial entrepreneur. You never have a perfect business, but if you have done enough homework and things seem to line up, then just do it. You can do it, because that's how we did it. But what's important is to be well prepared, not only in generating a good, solid business plan, but in the meantime, when you're working, never stop learning. Take an interest in business, and take on projects in management, take on projects on your job, working for find a job that's in a very well-managed company, and hopefully get to work for an experienced mentor in the senior management to give you the background of how decisions are made to broaden your horizon. And I also think that 1 + 1 is more than 2 in terms of technical expertise. If you have a PhD in electrical engineering, doesn't mean you couldn't become an expert in business or become an expert in biotech. So broaden your horizon, and you'll have a lot more opportunities. But take an interest in business and management. And if you do start business for the first time, actually, rather than think big, is to think small, think niche. And think of a niche business to get you the first win, and then you will have many more opportunities over your lifetime and also in your career, and then also you can build out the business over time as you maneuver, starting with initial success. But if you do want to proceed to pursue a hot idea, most of us do, is to find investors who are intellectual, who are willing to listen to reasoning, not just cookie-cutter approach to businesses, and who can provide you insightful business inputs, and also enable you to pursue the prototype of the business first, do things that are rational. And finally, think of the network you have. It's your hidden resources. When you need information, know where to hire people, raise money, etc., your network can be very helpful. And also develop close relationship because, like they say, it's lonely at the top when you start a business. You do need confidant who you can brainstorm ideas with. And these all takes time to nurture these relationships and engage mentor and start now. Thinking back, I was really fortunate to have this Professor Gilbert, economics professor at Caltech during my master's degree year. He recommended that I read the Business Week, Fortune, Forbes, and Barron's and the Wall Street Journal at the time. I don't read Barron's anymore because I don't play the stock market, but I have almost never stopped an issue, never skip an issue in these 4 magazines, 4 journals, publications. And I learned a lot. During the early days, I don't understand most of what's in it, but gradually I learned, and then I was able to use what I learned to draw analogies to apply to my situation. So with that, then, I wish you well, and hope that we will have a chance to interact again. Now, I will, Helen, I guess I will go to the Q&As, huh?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I see the first question is from Ashik Raji Mamanhar. Well, the question is, I think I'll skip the names from this point on to make it easier for you. The question is, what do you think is the best way to approach potential team members with regard to protecting IP? And I think the conventional way is obviously to sign an NDA. And to that I will add, don't have a partner whom you don't trust. So I think a better answer is, in fact, to have to bring in partners that you can trust. I actually rarely see NDA being signed in the early days. The second one is I am developing an enterprise with no employees. Everything is done by contracting. Any advice about that? Well, I'm not being flippant, but if you think about it, whatever works for your type of business works. So it's probably okay. But my feeling, at least for what I wanted to do, is that I think there will be no continuity, no corporate memory, so to speak, and there will be no loyalty. And it's also very hard to contain the proprietary information, especially its confidential information. And so I actually urge you to examine your motivation. I think there's a little issue there. I think there's a little trust issue that you need to, maybe do a behavioral modification to think about your attitude, to find ways to, and that's hard to do, of course, but maybe is to really understand what is behind that thinking, and maybe you can find a different way of doing it to get the same result. Maybe you don't want to hassle people. So maybe have a permanent relationship without commitment in the sense of some of the business management hassles. what are your thoughts on bootstrapping? When does it work, and when do you need to exit that model? I think, that's really the model I've been touting. I did it both Newport and New Focus, and many of the investments, successful ones that I invest as angel investors, have worked that way. And so I think that's fine. But, you have to realize you cannot levitate. You need financial resources to do business, to execute properly. So, so I don't have the right answer for you. I think the answer has to come from a detailed, thorough business plan so that you can come to the right answer, whether you can bootstrap or not. The next one is, should we incorporate before talking to potential investors? How do you divide up the shares among the founders? Well, I think it's really important to incorporate, and in fact, I think C Corp, so that the body language to your investors, potential investors, is that you're serious about building a real business. And I think in terms of the split of the ownership, the convention varies a great deal in the Valley. I can give you what's customary in the Silicon Valley, but that wouldn't apply to your case. So, you'll be incorporating. So talk to your lawyer, go to a good law firm, and ask them for the convention formula. And also you can get the same from local VCs, because VCs tend to be very particular about the percentage split. So they will have good answers for you. Next one is, what are the service opportunity you see for early stage engineering firm? I think that is a very good idea because that by definition is a personal relationship, and that can give you a lot of protection in some sense. It's less competitive. On the other hand, I think it's important to warn you that it's not like what most of us think. Like I used to think if you have a couple, 3 clients, you can make a living. I know a career consultant, although I must say he's a technology marketing consultant, but he told me that it takes like a couple hundred clients to make a steady living. It's not a very steady income. So you want to understand that aspect as well. So how do you get on an advisory board of a startup company? That means I'm assuming you want to become an advisor. I think that's very difficult. I think that everybody has their ego and don't necessarily know that they need help. And I also found, unfortunately, most advisory boards are really more for window dressing. People really like to hear what they want to hear. And so I think it's very difficult, but it can be done. And I guess the more positive answer to your question is to really hang out your shingles out there and let people know that you want to do that, and then just sign on. The next one is that from, wow, I see generic human. How do you handle a board of directors, and how do we know we need a board of directors? Well, first of all, legally you need a board of directors, which could be just one, yourself. But I think the fact that you asked this question means you really don't want to have a board. But I think the board can be very helpful because they give you if nothing else, the sanity check. And in order to get the most out of your board of directors, you have to work with them openly. I have found that once I became a VC, that generally had not been the case, because I became sitting on the opposite side of the table, even though I'm the same person. As an angel investor, I'm a colleague, but as a VC, I'm sitting on the other table, not really become effective on the board. People tell you what they want to tell you. And so I think it's a loss to the company. I think it's essential to work openly with the board, spend time to educate them about the the detailed ins and outs of the business so they can be truly helpful to you. Generic humans have frailties. We have human frailties, right? Okay, the next one is, can we get the slides from me? Oh, yeah, of course. I'm very helpful, very open, and I usually respond to my email promptly when people ask me a question if the question is thoughtful and not flippant. In a sense, I help people who are serious, who really need help. And this one says, I scroll past my question. Do you see good reasons why one should not contract everything out instead of hiring employees in the anti-business environment that exists? I already answered the question, but let me add, based on what you just said now, is that, business relationships are built on trust and mutual respect. So I think it's unfortunate that anti-business is what you read, but that's not where the real businesses are like. Generally, there are companies built on loyalty between the company and the employee, and between company, employee, and the customers. So I don't think it needs to be anti, and I think don't start out with that premise, but rather start with the premise of building trust and relationship and mutual respect. How hard was it for you to leave a business you started and grew? I early on make the point about build a business over time. I took Newport public, and I left it after I was there for 17 years. And so that is the kind of time frame you put in. You put in your life, energy into devotion into a company, in this case for 17 years. It was extremely difficult to leave. It's a very emotional thing. There are a lot of conflicts on your mind. But, you have to do what you have to do. I think it's like raising children. It's time to move on at a certain point in time. And, in fact, it's good for the company and it's good for the individual involved. For me, I went on to create many more startup companies and advise a lot of people, and really enjoy doing what I'm doing. And the company also grew on its own. And don't forget, the basis or the justification of starting an enterprise is, in fact, to have an independent entity, organism, that can grow without being dependent on any one individual. It's a system. It's an organization. So, let's see. Oh, there's one more question. Is that what is the criteria to choose the right VC for different business fields? I think for different business fields, that's an easy answer, because VCs have very specific charter to specialization to invest in. So a firm specializes in financial, would not invest in high tech and so forth. But in terms of choosing the right VC, I think you want to choose on the more concrete side is that the time frame has to match. If a fund has only 3 years remaining, they're not likely to invest in your 10-year proposition, and the investment, so the investment criteria and the return needs and so forth. But what's also important is the chemistry and the way that the company is run. What you don't want for sure is the cookie cutter approach to business solutions. You want to find people you can work with, you can relate to, who will listen and think about issues intellectually to help you. So I think with that, I think we are done. Helen, anything else you want to add?
That's all. I want to thank you, Milton, and the participants.
Okay, thank you. And feel free to keep in touch. Thank you. Bye-bye.